For 15 years, Sarah Mitchell cleaned the offices of the most powerful law firm in the city, invisible to everyone who walked past her. She was just a cleaning lady, someone people looked through rather than at. But one night, while cleaning a senior partner's office, she discovered something that would shatter everything she thought she knew about her daughter's death. Hidden among scattered files was her daughter's name, attached to documents that proved the drunk driving accident that killed her 17-year-old Emily was nothing but an elaborate lie. The real killer had walked free while an innocent man rotted in prison, and the man responsible for this monstrous cover-up was someone Sarah had cleaned up after for 3 years. Now, armed with evidence that could destroy one of the city's most untouchable men, Sarah faces an impossible choice. She's just a cleaning lady with no money, no connections, and no power. He's a legal titan with unlimited resources and decades of experience crushing anyone who dares challenge him. He's already threatened her family and filed criminal charges against her. Every logical part of her brain screams to walk away, to take his money and stay silent. But mothers don't walk away from their children, not even 15 years after they're gone. This is the story of an invisible woman who refused to stay silent. A story of justice delayed, but not denied. A story that proves sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't money or connections. It's a mother's love and an unshakable belief that the truth matters, no matter the cost. If you want to see how this battle unfolds, make sure to follow our channel, leave a like, and comment below telling us where you're watching from. Your support helps us bring you more incredible true stories of courage and justice. The fluorescent lights of Henderson and Associates hummed above Sarah Mitchell as she pushed her cleaning cart down the marble hallway. It was 11:47 p.m., and the law firm's offices were finally empty, or so she thought. Her worn sneakers squeaked softly against the polished floor as she made her way toward the senior partner's suite, the same route she'd taken every weeknight for the past 3 years. Sarah had perfected the art of invisibility. At 42, she'd learned that people like her, the cleaners, the maintenance workers, the night staff, existed in a strange parallel universe. They occupied the same spaces as the powerful, the wealthy, the important, but somehow remained completely unseen. It was a superpower she'd never wanted, but had mastered nonetheless. She unlocked the door to Marcus Henderson's office with her master key, expecting the usual scene. An immaculate desk, legal briefs stacked with military precision, and the faint scent of expensive cologne lingering in the air. Instead, she found chaos. Papers were scattered across the floor like autumn leaves. File cabinets stood open, their contents spilling out in disarray. The antique lamp that usually sat on Henderson's desk lay shattered on the Persian rug, its pieces glinting in the dim light, filtering through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Sarah's heart began to pound. In 3 years, she'd never seen anything like this. Henderson was meticulous to the point of obsession. Everyone on the cleaning crew knew it. This wasn't just unusual, it was impossible. She should leave. She should call building security. She should do anything except what she did next. Sarah stepped into the office, her curiosity overriding her common sense. Maybe there'd been a break-in. Maybe she should check if anything was stolen. Maybe she was just tired of being invisible and wanted, for once, to matter. As she bent to pick up some of the scattered papers, her eyes caught on a name that made her freeze. Emily Mitchell. Her daughter's name. Her daughter who'd died 15 years ago in a car accident. Her daughter whose death had shattered Sarah's world into a million pieces that she was still trying to reassemble. With trembling hands, Sarah gathered the papers. They were photocopies of old police reports, medical records, and something that looked like a private investigator's notes. All of them were about the accident that had killed Emily. But that made no sense. The accident had been straightforward. A drunk driver had crossed the center line on a rainy night, killing Emily instantly. The driver had been convicted, sentenced, and as far as Sarah knew, was still in prison. Why would Marcus Henderson, one of the city's most powerful attorneys, have files about her daughter's death? Sarah's legs felt weak. She sank into Henderson's leather chair, spreading the documents across his desk. Her eyes scanned page after page, and with each line she read, the room seemed to tilt and spin around her. The drunk driver, James Wilson, had been represented by Henderson and Associates. That much she knew. It had been in the news at the time. But what she hadn't known, what nobody had told her, was that Wilson hadn't been drunk at all. The toxicology reports had been falsified. The breathalyzer test had been tampered with. The entire case had been built on lies. According to the private investigator's notes, Wilson had been sober when he crashed into Emily's car. But he hadn't been alone. There'd been someone else in the vehicle with him, someone whose name had been carefully erased from every official report. Marcus Henderson's son, Derek Henderson. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She read the next paragraph 3 times before its meaning fully penetrated the shock that was enveloping her mind like ice water. Derek Henderson had been behind the wheel. Derek Henderson had been the one who crossed the center line. Derek Henderson had killed her daughter, and his father had orchestrated an elaborate cover-up, paid off witnesses, falsified evidence, and sent an innocent man to prison to protect his son. The rage that flooded through Sarah was so intense it felt physical, like electricity coursing through her veins. For 15 years, she'd mourned her daughter. For 15 years, she'd believed it was just a tragic accident, a terrible twist of fate. For 15 years, she'd cleaned this man's office, emptied his trash, polished his desk, while he sat in his leather chair knowing exactly what he'd done, knowing that he'd destroyed her life to save his son's future. Sarah's hands shook as she pulled out her phone. She started photographing every document, every page, every piece of evidence that Marcus Henderson had been foolish enough to keep. She didn't know why he'd kept it: guilt, insurance, leverage against his son, but she didn't care. All that mattered was that she now had proof. She was so focused on documenting everything that she didn't hear the office door open. She didn't hear the footsteps approaching. She didn't realize she was no longer alone until a voice, cold, cultured, and utterly calm, spoke from behind her. "I always wondered if someone would find those files eventually. I just never imagined it would be you, Mrs. Mitchell." Sarah spun around in the chair, her phone clutched in her hand. Marcus Henderson stood in the doorway, his suit still immaculate despite the late hour, his silver hair perfectly combed. He didn't look angry, or even particularly surprised. He looked like a man who'd been expecting this moment for a very long time. "I wondered if you'd recognize your daughter's name," he continued, stepping into the office and closing the door behind him. "But then why would you? You're just the cleaning lady. Invisible. Forgettable. Someone who exists in the background of other people's lives." Sarah found her voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. "You killed my daughter." "No," Henderson corrected, his tone as measured as if he were addressing a jury. "Your daughter's death was an unfortunate accident. What I did was protect my son from a justice system that would have destroyed his future over one tragic mistake. You, of all people, should understand a parent's love." The casual cruelty of his words hit Sarah like a physical blow. She stood up from the chair, her fear dissolving into something harder, stronger, more dangerous. "You're going to pay for what you did," she said, her voice steady now. "I have photographs of everything. I'm going to the police, to the newspapers, to anyone who will listen." Henderson smiled, and it was the smile of a man who'd won every case he'd ever tried. "Are you? Let me tell you how this ends, Mrs. Mitchell. You go to the police with stolen documents photographed illegally during a break-in to my private office. I have the best lawyers in the state. They work here. You have," he gestured dismissively at her uniform, "a high school education and a criminal trespass charge waiting to be filed. Who do you think they'll believe?" Sarah's fingers tightened around her phone, the device feeling like both a weapon and a lifeline in her trembling hand. The photographs were already uploaded to her cloud storage. She'd learned that much from her teenage grandson, who was always talking about backing things up. Marcus Henderson didn't know that, couldn't know that, but the smug certainty in his eyes told her he believed he'd already won this confrontation before it had truly begun. "You think you have me cornered," Sarah said, her voice gaining strength with each word. "You think because I'm poor, because I clean toilets for a living, because I never went to college, that I'm stupid, that I don't matter. That's what you've always thought, isn't it? Every time I emptied your trash, every time I cleaned your windows, you never once really looked at me. I was furniture to you. Less than furniture." Henderson's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes, a flash of irritation at being lectured by someone he considered so far beneath him. "Mrs. Mitchell, I understand you're emotional right now. You've discovered something traumatic, something that's reopened old wounds. But emotion won't change the facts. You broke into my office." "I have a key," Sarah interrupted. "I'm employed by the cleaning company that has a contract with this building. I'm authorized to be here. After hours, yes. To clean, not to photograph confidential attorney-client privileged documents." Henderson moved further into the room, his movements casual but purposeful, like a predator who knew his prey had nowhere to run. "The moment you started taking pictures of those files, you committed multiple crimes. Theft of confidential information, invasion of privacy, possibly even industrial espionage, depending on how the district attorney wants to frame it. Sarah felt the walls closing in around her. He was right, of course. She'd been so focused on what those documents revealed that she hadn't considered the legal implications of how she'd obtained them. But then, people like her never thought about things like attorney-client privilege. They thought about survival, about making rent, about getting through another day. "So what happens now?" she asked, hating how small her voice sounded. "You call the police? Have me arrested? Send me to jail to protect your secret?" Henderson walked to the window, gazing out at the city lights sprawled below like a carpet of stars. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight of something that might have been regret in anyone else, but in him seemed more like calculated strategy. That would be messy. Arrests lead to questions. Questions lead to investigations. Investigations, even when they lead nowhere, create complications. "No, I think we can handle this more elegantly." He turned back to face her, and Sarah saw the full force of the intelligence that had made him one of the most feared attorneys in the state. This was a man who'd built a career on finding people's weaknesses and exploiting them without mercy. "You have a grandson, don't you? Michael, I believe. 16 years old. Bright kid, from what I understand. He wants to go to college, doesn't he? Maybe become an engineer. But scholarships are competitive, and even with financial aid, there are expenses. Books, housing, fees. It adds up quickly." Sarah's blood turned to ice. "Don't you dare. I'm not threatening anyone, Mrs. Mitchell. I'm offering you a deal. You delete those photographs. You forget what you saw tonight. You never speak of this to anyone. And in return, I establish a trust fund for Michael's education. Full tuition, room and board, living expenses. For years at any university that accepts him. It's worth approximately $200,000, and it comes with no strings attached except your silence." The offer hung in the air between them like poison. Sarah felt physically sick. He was trying to buy her silence with her grandson's future, weaponizing the thing she cared about most against her. It was brilliant and monstrous in equal measure. "You think you can just throw money at me and make this go away?" Sarah's voice shook with rage. "You murdered my daughter. Your son murdered my daughter, and you covered it up. You sent an innocent man to prison. You destroyed lives. And you think $200,000 makes that okay?" Henderson's face hardened. "Your daughter's death was a tragedy. Nothing will bring her back. Not justice, not revenge, not seeing my son punished. Emily is gone, Mrs. Mitchell. But Michael is here. He's alive. He has a future. You can ensure that future is bright, or you can throw it away on a crusade that will accomplish nothing except destroying what little you have left." Sarah wanted to scream, to throw something, to physically attack this man who stood there so calmly discussing her daughter's death like it was a business transaction. But she forced herself to think, to really consider what he was saying beneath the cruelty. He was scared. She could see it now, hidden beneath the bravado and the threats and the offers of money. Marcus Henderson, the man who had everything, who controlled everything, was afraid of a cleaning lady with a phone full of photographs. That fear was a kind of power, and Sarah had never held power before in her life. "What happened to James Wilson?" she asked suddenly. "The man you sent to prison for something he didn't do. Is he still there?" Henderson hesitated, and in that hesitation, Sarah saw confirmation of something she'd suspected. Wilson was released 3 years ago. He served his sentence. His sentence for a crime he didn't commit. How old was he when you framed him? 24. So he went to prison at 24 and got out at, what, 34? 35? 10 years of his life gone. Does he know? Does he know it was your son who was actually driving? Henderson's jaw tightened. Wilson accepted a plea deal. He admitted guilt. As far as the legal system is concerned, the case is closed. But he wasn't guilty. You knew he wasn't guilty. You manufactured evidence to convict an innocent man. Sarah took a step toward Henderson, no longer caring about the power differential between them. How many laws did you break doing that? Obstruction of justice? Evidence tampering? Subornation of perjury? I don't know all the legal terms, but I know you committed crimes. Serious crimes. The kind that would get you disbarred. The kind that would send you to prison. She saw the calculation happening behind Henderson's eyes, saw him reassessing her, recategorizing her from harmless to potentially dangerous. Good. Let him be afraid. You're thinking about this wrong, Henderson said, his voice taking on a different quality, smoother, more persuasive. This was his courtroom voice, the one he used to convince juries. You're thinking about punishment, about revenge. But ask yourself, what do you really want? Do you want to see an old man go to prison? Do you want to destroy my son, who made one terrible mistake 15 years ago and has lived with that guilt every day since? Has he? Sarah demanded. Has he really lived with guilt? Or has he lived with the comfort of knowing Daddy fixed everything? Where is Derek now? What's he doing? Henderson's silence was answer enough. He's successful, isn't he? Sarah pressed. He probably has a good job, a nice house, maybe a family of his own. He got to live the life my daughter never had. And he did it while an innocent man sat in prison, and I cleaned offices at night because I couldn't afford to fall apart after Emily died. What do you want, Mrs. Mitchell? Henderson's voice was sharp now, the smooth persuasion stripped away. Tell me what you want, and let's end this. Sarah looked at the man who'd destroyed her life, who'd looked through her for 3 years, who thought he could buy or intimidate his way out of anything. And in that moment, she realized something crucial. She didn't know what she wanted. Justice? It was too late for that. Revenge? It would only make her like him. Money? She'd never cared about money, even when she had none. What she wanted was for Emily to be alive. What she wanted was to turn back time. What she wanted was impossible. But standing in that office, surrounded by the evidence of corruption and cover-ups, Sarah Mitchell made a decision that would change everything. She wasn't the invisible woman anymore. She had power now, and she was going to use it. I'll tell you what I want, she said quietly. I want 48 hours to decide. Don't try to contact me. Don't follow me. Don't do anything except wait. In 48 hours, I'll let you know what happens next. Before Henderson could respond, Sarah walked past him, out of the office, down the hallway, and into the elevator. Her hands didn't start shaking until the doors closed, and she was alone, descending through the building like a stone dropping through water. She'd just threatened one of the most powerful men in the city. She'd just made an enemy of someone who could destroy her without breaking a sweat. And for the first time in 15 years, Sarah Mitchell felt truly alive. Sarah's apartment was a third-floor walk-up in a building that had seen better days sometime around 1970. The stairs creaked under her weight as she climbed them at 3 in the morning, her body exhausted, but her mind racing too fast for sleep to even be a possibility. Her hands still trembled as she fumbled with her keys, dropping them twice before finally managing to unlock the door. Inside, the small studio was exactly as she'd left it, neat, sparse, functional. A bed in one corner, a tiny kitchenette along one wall, a bathroom barely large enough to turn around in. The only decoration was a collection of photographs on the wall above her bed. Emily at every age, from newborn to 17. Emily laughing, Emily serious, Emily caught mid-motion in a blur of teenage energy. The last photo had been taken 2 weeks before the accident. Sarah sank onto her bed, staring at her daughter's face. I found out what really happened to you, she whispered to the photograph. I found out who did it. I found out everything. The apartment offered no response except the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic from the street below. Sarah pulled out her phone, opening the cloud storage app to verify that the photographs were still there, that she hadn't imagined the entire night. Page after page of evidence filled her screen, each one a piece of the puzzle that had destroyed her life 15 years ago. She should call the police. She knew that. She should take everything she'd found and go straight to the authorities. But Henderson's words echoed in her mind. Who do you think they'll believe? She'd spent enough years being invisible to know that the world didn't work the way it was supposed to work. Rich men like Marcus Henderson didn't go to prison. They had lawyers and connections, and the kind of power that bent reality to their will. Sarah needed help. She needed someone who understood how the system actually worked, not how it was supposed to work. And there was only one person she could think of who might be able to help her, though the thought of reaching out to him made her stomach twist with anxiety. James Wilson, the man who'd spent 10 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit. The man whose life had been sacrificed to protect Derek Henderson's future. If anyone had a reason to want justice, it was him. Finding him wouldn't be easy. Sarah had never been good with computers, never really understood how to search for things online beyond the basics. But she had her grandson Michael, who could find anything with just a few clicks. The problem was that Michael was asleep at his mother's house, Sarah's daughter-in-law, who'd never really warmed to her after Sarah's son had died in a construction accident 5 years ago. Sarah glanced at the clock, 3:17 a.m. Too early to call anyone. Too early to do anything except sit and think and try to process the earthquake that had just shattered the foundation of everything she'd believed about her daughter's death. She must have dozed off at some point, because the next thing she knew, Pale sunlight was streaming through her window, and her phone was ringing. The caller ID showed Henderson and Associates. Sarah's heart lurched. Henderson wouldn't call her directly, would he? Not after their confrontation last night. She answered, her voice cautious. "Hello, Mrs. Mitchell?" The voice was female, young, nervous. "This is Jessica Chin. I'm a paralegal at Henderson and Associates. I need to speak with you about something important. Can we meet?" Sarah's mind raced. Was this a trap? Had Henderson sent someone to intimidate her or trick her into giving up the photographs? "I don't think that's a good idea. Please." The desperation in the young woman's voice was palpable. "I know what you found last night. I know about the files in Mr. Henderson's office. And I know you're in danger." "How do you?" "The building has security cameras, Mrs. Mitchell. Mr. Henderson reviewed the footage this morning. He knows you were in his office. He knows you took photographs. But I'm not calling on his behalf. I'm calling because I need your help as much as you need mine." Sarah sat up straighter, suddenly very awake. "What are you talking about?" There was a pause, and when Jessica spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I've been trying to expose Marcus Henderson for 2 years. I have evidence of other cases he's manipulated, other crimes he's covered up. But I'm just a paralegal. Nobody will listen to me. When I saw you on the security footage, when I realized what you'd found, I thought maybe together we could actually do something. Why should I trust you? You work for him. I work in the same building as him, yes. But I don't work for him, not really. Not in any way that matters." Jessica's voice gained strength. "Look, I know you have no reason to trust me, but I can prove what I'm saying. I have files, recordings, documentation of everything Henderson has done. Meet me somewhere public. Look at what I have. Then decide if you want to work together." Sarah wanted to say no. Every instinct told her this was dangerous, that she was getting in over her head. But she thought about Emily's face in the photographs on her wall, thought about James Wilson spending 10 years in prison, thought about Marcus Henderson's smug certainty that he could buy or threaten his way out of anything. "Where and when?" Sarah asked. "There's a coffee shop on Morrison Street, 3 blocks from the law firm. Brood Awakening. Do you know it?" Sarah knew it. She'd walked past it 1,000 times on her way to work, had pressed her face against the window on cold winter nights, smelling the coffee she couldn't afford. "I know it. Meet me there at 10 o'clock. I'll be wearing a red jacket. And Mrs. Mitchell? Don't tell anyone you're meeting me. Not your family, not your friends, no one. Henderson has eyes everywhere." The line went dead before Sarah could respond. She stared at her phone, wondering if she'd just made a terrible mistake. But what choice did she have? She couldn't do this alone. She needed allies, and Jessica Chin, whoever she really was, might be the only ally she'd get. Sarah spent the next few hours preparing. She made copies of the photographs on a USB drive she'd gotten free from the bank years ago. She wrote down everything she remembered from the files, every detail, every name, every date. If something happened to her, if Henderson decided she was too dangerous to leave alive, at least there would be a record. The thought that she might be in physical danger hadn't really occurred to her until now. Henderson was a lawyer, a respectable member of society. But he was also a man who destroyed evidence, framed an innocent person, and kept detailed records of his crimes for 15 years. That wasn't the behavior of someone entirely rational. That was the behavior of someone who believed he was untouchable. At 9:30, Sarah left her apartment and walked toward Morrison Street. The morning was crisp and clear, the kind of autumn day that made the city look almost beautiful. People rushed past her on the sidewalk, caught up in their own lives, their own problems. None of them knew that the cleaning lady they brushed past was carrying evidence that could bring down one of the city's most powerful men. The coffee shop was busy when she arrived, filled with the morning rush of people grabbing lattes before work. Sarah spotted Jessica immediately, a young Asian woman in a bright red jacket, sitting at a corner table with her back to the wall. She was maybe 25, with long dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, and the kind of intense, focused expression that reminded Sarah of Emily when she'd been studying for exams. Sarah approached the table slowly, still uncertain if this was real or some elaborate trap. Jessica looked up, and their eyes met. In that instant, Sarah saw something in the young woman's face that convinced her this was genuine fear. Real, bone-deep fear, the kind that came from knowing you were about to do something that could destroy your life. "Mrs. Mitchell," Jessica said, gesturing to the empty chair across from her. "Thank you for coming. I know how much courage that took." Sarah sat down, setting her purse carefully in her lap. The USB drive was in the inside pocket, close to her body. You said you have evidence. I want to see it. Jessica nodded and pulled out a tablet from her bag. She opened a file and turned the screen towards Sarah. I've been documenting everything for 2 years. Every case that seemed suspicious, every file that disappeared, every conversation I overheard. I started because of my brother. Your brother? Jessica's eyes glistened with unshed tears. 5 years ago, my brother was arrested for assault. He said he didn't do it, said the police had the wrong person, but nobody believed him. His public defender was useless. He was convicted and sent to prison. He died there last year, beaten to death by another inmate over something stupid. I'm sorry, Sarah said softly. After he died, I started going through his case files, and I found irregularities, evidence that had been excluded, witnesses who were never called. It all pointed back to Henderson and Associates. They'd represented the actual person who'd committed the assault, a rich kid whose father was friends with Marcus Henderson. My brother went to prison so their client could walk free. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. The same thing he did to my daughter. Exactly, and he's done it before, multiple times. I have documentation of at least 7 cases over the past 20 years where Henderson manipulated evidence, bribed witnesses, or outright framed innocent people to protect his wealthy clients. Jessica leaned forward, her voice urgent. But I can't prove it alone. I'm nobody. I'm a paralegal without connections or resources. The moment I try to go public, Henderson will destroy me. He'll say I'm a disgruntled employee, that I falsified documents, that I'm mentally unstable. He'll ruin my career and possibly have me arrested. So what do you want from me? Jessica met her eyes. I want to help you get justice for your daughter. And I want you to help me get justice for my brother and all the other people Henderson has destroyed. Together, we're not just one powerless person. We're 2. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. Sarah looked at the young woman across from her, saw the determination mixed with fear, saw the grief that mirrored her own. She thought about Emily, about James Wilson, about Jessica's brother, about all the lives that Marcus Henderson had casually destroyed to serve his own interests. Okay, Sarah said. Tell me what we need to do. Jessica spent the next hour showing Sarah everything she'd compiled. Spreadsheets tracking Henderson's suspicious cases, audio recordings of conversations she'd secretly captured, emails she'd printed before they could be deleted from the firm's servers. It was overwhelming, the sheer scope of Marcus Henderson's corruption. He'd been doing this for decades, using his position and power to manipulate the justice system for anyone who could afford his services. But as comprehensive as Jessica's evidence was, it had one critical flaw. It was all circumstantial. Suggestive patterns, suspicious coincidences, but nothing that definitively proved Henderson had committed crimes. The files Sarah had photographed were different. They were direct evidence of a specific crime, with names, dates, and details that couldn't be explained away. We need James Wilson, Jessica said, closing her tablet. If he's willing to testify about what really happened, about how Henderson approached him with a plea deal, it would corroborate everything in those files. Sarah had been thinking the same thing. Do you know where he is? Jessica nodded slowly. I tracked him down 6 months ago when I was researching your daughter's case. He's living in a halfway house on the east side. He works at an auto repair shop. From what I could find, he's been trying to rebuild his life, but it's hard. A felony conviction follows you everywhere. A conviction for something he didn't do, Sarah said bitterly. Exactly, which means he has every reason to help us. But Mrs. Mitchell, you need to understand something. James Wilson spent 10 years in prison. 10 years of his life were stolen from him. When we approach him, when we ask him to relive all of that trauma, to potentially put himself in Henderson's crosshairs again, he might say no. He might want nothing to do with this. And we have to be prepared for that. Sarah understood. She'd spent 15 years trying to move forward from Emily's death, trying to build some semblance of a life from the ruins. The idea of voluntarily diving back into that pain, of making it fresh and raw again, was terrifying. But she had a reason now. She had purpose. James Wilson might not. They agreed to visit him that afternoon. Jessica would take a long lunch break, claiming a dentist appointment. Sarah would call in sick to the cleaning company, something she'd never done in 3 years, but desperate times called for desperate measures. The auto repair shop where Wilson worked was called Eddie's Auto, a small garage tucked between a laundromat and a discount grocery store. The neighborhood was rough, the kind of place where people minded their own business because getting involved in other people's problems was a good way to create your own. Sarah and Jessica stood outside the garage for a long moment, neither quite ready to take the next step. Through the open bay door, they could see a man in grease-stained coveralls working under the hood of a battered sedan. He was tall and lean, with the kind of body that suggested he'd once been heavier and had lost weight through stress rather than choice. "That's him," Jessica whispered. Sarah's heart was pounding. She was about to meet the man whose life had been destroyed alongside her own, the man who'd paid the price for her daughter's death even though he'd done nothing wrong. What do you say to someone like that? How do you even begin? Jessica must have sensed her hesitation because she reached out and squeezed Sarah's hand. "We can do this. We have to do this." They walked into the garage together. The smell of oil and exhaust was overwhelming. A radio played classic rock somewhere in the back. The man under the hood didn't look up, too focused on whatever he was doing to the engine. "Excuse me," Sarah said, her voice barely carrying over the sound of the radio. "Are you James Wilson?" The man froze. For a moment, he didn't move at all, didn't even seem to breathe. Then slowly, very slowly, he straightened up and turned to face them. His face was weathered beyond his years, lined with the kind of deep grooves that came from stress and hardship. His eyes were wary, the eyes of someone who'd learned not to trust easily. "Who's asking?" His voice was rough, defensive. "My name is Sarah Mitchell. This is Jessica Chin. We need to talk to you about something that happened 15 years ago. About the night you were arrested for vehicular manslaughter." Wilson's face went pale. He took a step back, nearly stumbling over a toolbox. "I don't talk about that. I served my time. I paid my debt to society. Whatever you want, I can't help you." "You didn't kill my daughter," Sarah said, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "Emily Mitchell. She was the girl who died in the accident. You didn't kill her. Derek Henderson did, and his father framed you to protect him." The impact of her words was physical. Wilson actually staggered, grabbing the edge of the car to steady himself. His face cycled through a dozen emotions in seconds: shock, confusion, anger, and something that might have been hope before it was crushed back down by years of learned helplessness. "That's not possible," he said, but his voice shook. "I pleaded guilty. I admitted to everything. I was drunk. I crossed the center line. I killed that girl." The words sounded rehearsed, like something he'd repeated to himself so many times it had become a mantra. "You pleaded guilty because Marcus Henderson convinced you it was your only option," Jessica said, pulling out her tablet. "Because he told you the evidence against you was overwhelming. Because he made you believe you'd get life in prison if you went to trial. But it was all a lie." Sarah pulled out her phone, opening the photographs she'd taken. "I found these in Henderson's office. They're police reports, medical records, investigator notes. They prove that you weren't drunk that night. The toxicology reports were falsified. You didn't kill my daughter, Mr. Wilson, but you've been punished for it anyway." Wilson took the phone with shaking hands. Sarah watched his face as he scrolled through the images, watched the 15 years of guilt and shame and self-hatred crack open to reveal the raw wound beneath. Tears started streaming down his face, leaving tracks through the grease on his cheeks. "I didn't do it," he whispered. "Oh God, I didn't do it. I told them. I told everyone. I said I wasn't drunk. I said something was wrong with the breathalyzer, but nobody believed me. My public defender said the evidence was clear. Henderson himself came to see me in jail, told me that if I took the plea deal I'd get manslaughter instead of murder, that I'd be out in 8 to 10 years instead of spending the rest of my life in prison. He said he was doing me a favor. He was protecting his son," Sarah said softly. "Derek Henderson was driving that night. He was the one who crossed the center line. His father paid off witnesses, tampered with evidence, and convinced you to take the fall." Wilson sank down onto an overturned crate, still clutching Sarah's phone. His whole body shook with the force of emotions he'd kept locked inside for over a decade. "I lost everything. My girlfriend left me. My family stopped visiting after the first year. I missed my mother's funeral because they wouldn't let me out for it. I got beaten up in prison because someone found out I'd killed a teenage girl. I thought about ending it, you know. I thought about just giving up. The only thing that kept me going was thinking that maybe if I served my time, if I paid for what I'd done, maybe I could find some kind of peace." "You didn't do anything wrong," Sarah said, and she was crying now too. "You lost 10 years of your life for nothing. An innocent man went to prison while the person who killed my daughter walked free." Wilson looked up at her, and Sarah saw something in his eyes that she recognized because she saw it in her own mirror every morning. The look of someone who'd been broken and had spent years trying to glue the pieces back together, only to discover they no longer fit the way they used to. "What do you want from me?" he asked. Jessica knelt down in front of him, her voice gentle but urgent. "We want to expose Marcus Henderson. We want to prove what he did to you, to Emily, to Sarah, to everyone he's hurt over the years. But we can't do it without you. We need you to testify about what happened, about how Henderson convinced you to plead guilty, about everything you remember from that time." "He'll destroy me," Wilson said. "He's one of the most powerful lawyers in the state. I'm an ex-con working in a garage. Who's going to believe me?" "We have evidence," Sarah said. "Documents, recordings, proof of everything he did. But we need your voice. We need someone who lived through it to stand up and tell the truth." Wilson was quiet for a long time, staring at the concrete floor of the garage. When he finally spoke, his voice was so low they had to lean in to hear him. "I've spent 15 years believing I was a murderer. 15 years thinking I killed a teenage girl. Do you have any idea what that does to a person? What it's like to live with that guilt every single day? I spent 15 years believing my daughter's death was just a random tragedy," Sarah said. "That some drunk driver made a mistake and destroyed my life. But it wasn't random. It was a choice. Marcus Henderson chose to protect his son instead of telling the truth. He chose to sacrifice you to save himself the embarrassment of having a son who killed someone. We can't change what happened. We can't bring Emily back. We can't give you back those 10 years. But we can make sure he doesn't get away with it. We can make sure everyone knows what he did." Wilson looked at her, really looked at her, and Sarah saw him making a decision. She saw the moment when rage overcame fear, when the need for justice outweighed the desire for safety. She'd seen that same moment in her own bathroom mirror earlier that morning. "Okay," Wilson said. "Tell me what I need to do." Jessica pulled out a notepad. "First, we need you to write down everything you remember. Every conversation with Henderson, every detail about the plea deal, every moment from your arrest through your trial. Everything." "Then what?" "Then we go to the media," Jessica said. "We bypass the legal system that Henderson controls. We take this story public, we show everyone what he really is, and we let public pressure force the authorities to investigate." Wilson nodded slowly. "He's going to come after us. All of us. You understand that, right? He's not going to just accept this. He's going to fight back with everything he has." "Let him fight," Sarah said. "I'm not afraid of him anymore." But that was a lie, and they all knew it. They were all terrified. They were 3 people, a cleaning lady, a paralegal, and an ex-con, preparing to take on one of the most powerful men in the city. The odds were overwhelmingly against them. But sometimes, Sarah thought, the right thing to do wasn't the safe thing. Sometimes justice required risk. Sometimes healing required pain. "When do we start?" Wilson asked. Jessica checked her watch. "Right now. Every minute we wait gives Henderson more time to cover his tracks." "Sarah, do you still have your copies of those files?" Sarah patted her purse. "Right here." "Good. Then let's get to work." They reconvened at Sarah's apartment 2 hours later. It was cramped with 3 people in the small space, but it felt safer than meeting anywhere public where Henderson's people might spot them. James Wilson sat on the only chair, hunched over Sarah's small dining table, writing furiously in a notebook Jessica had provided. Sarah perched on the edge of her bed, watching him fill page after page with his memories of 15 years ago. Jessica paced the narrow strip of floor between the kitchenette and the door, her phone pressed to her ear as she tried to reach contacts in the media. "No, I understand you need to verify sources," Jessica was saying, frustration evident in her voice. "But this is a major story. Marcus Henderson is one of the most prominent attorneys in the state, and we have evidence that he's been manipulating the justice system for decades." "Yes, I'll send you the preliminary documents." "No, I can't give you everything until we have protection. Because the moment this goes public, we're all in danger, that's why." Sarah watched Jessica pace, admiring the young woman's courage. At 25, she had her whole life ahead of her. She could walk away from this, find another job, pretend she'd never discovered the truth about her brother's case. But she wasn't walking away. She was fighting, even though it terrified her. Wilson's pen scratched across the paper, the sound oddly loud in the small apartment. He'd been writing for over an hour, stopping occasionally to stare at the wall as he pulled up memories he'd probably tried hard to bury. His face was tight with concentration and something darker. Pain, maybe, or rage that had been simmering for 15 years and was finally finding an outlet. "I remember now," Wilson said suddenly, looking up from his notebook. "I remember something Henderson said when he came to see me in jail. He told me that sometimes innocent people have to make sacrifices for the greater good. At the time, I thought he was talking about me pleading guilty, even though I didn't remember being drunk. I thought he meant I was sacrificing my freedom to avoid a worse sentence. But he wasn't talking about that at all, was he? He was talking about me sacrificing my freedom to protect his son. Sarah felt her stomach twist. He actually said that to you. Not in those exact words, but yes. He made it sound philosophical, like he was giving me wisdom. Like he was doing me a favor by letting me be the sacrifice. Wilson's hand tightened on his pen until his knuckles went white. I was 24 years old. I was scared out of my mind. I'd never been in trouble before, never even had a speeding ticket. And this famous lawyer was telling me that I was going to prison no matter what, that my only choice was how long I'd be there. So I believed him. I trusted him. Jessica ended her call and turned to face them. I've got interest from 3 reporters. 2 want to meet tomorrow. 1 wants documents tonight. I'm going to send them the preliminary stuff, case summaries, timelines, nothing that directly implicates Henderson yet. Once they verify what we're saying is credible, they'll want the full story. Will they protect us? Sarah asked. Will they keep our names out of it until we're ready? They'll try, but we need to be realistic. The moment this story breaks, Henderson will know it came from us. There's no way to hide that. James is the only person who could know the details of his own case. I'm one of the few people with access to Henderson's files. And you, Mrs. Mitchell, were caught on security camera in his office. He already knows we're the threat. The words hung heavy in the air. They were past the point of no return now. Even if they wanted to back out, even if they decided the risk was too great, Henderson already knew they had evidence against him. He was probably already planning his counterattack. Sarah's phone rang, making all 3 of them jump. The caller ID showed a number she didn't recognize. Her hand shook as she answered. Hello, Mrs. Mitchell, this is Detective Raymond Torres with the City Police Department. I need you to come down to the station to answer some questions about a break-in at Henderson and Associates last night. Sarah's blood ran cold. She looked at Jessica and Wilson, seeing her own fear reflected in their faces. I didn't break in anywhere. I work there. I'm employed by the cleaning company. Nevertheless, we have some concerns about your activities in the building last night. Marcus Henderson has filed a formal complaint alleging theft of confidential documents. I'm sure this is all just a misunderstanding, but we need to get your statement on record. Can you come in this afternoon? Sarah's mind raced. This was it. Henderson was making his move, using the police to intimidate her, to paint her as a criminal before she could expose him. If she went to the police station, would they arrest her? Would Henderson have manufactured evidence to support his claims? I'd like to bring my lawyer, Sarah said, even though she didn't have a lawyer and couldn't afford one. That's certainly your right, ma'am. But I should tell you, the sooner we clear this up, the better it will be for everyone involved. Mr. Henderson is willing to drop the charges if you return the documents and sign a non-disclosure agreement. He seems to think this was just a misunderstanding on your part. There it was, Henderson's strategy laid bare. He was offering her an out, one last chance to take the easy road, to avoid criminal charges in exchange for her silence. It was the same strategy he'd used on James Wilson 15 years ago. Make them afraid, make them feel like they have no choice, then offer them a deal that's really just another trap. I'll need to check my schedule and get back to you, Detective, Sarah said, proud that her voice remained steady. Don't take too long, Mrs. Mitchell. Mr. Henderson has been very patient, but his patience won't last forever. And frankly, the longer this drags on, the worse it looks for you. Sarah ended the call and immediately looked at Jessica. He's using the police to threaten me. He's filed charges. Of course he has, Jessica said bitterly. It's his standard playbook. Overwhelm the target with legal threats, make them feel helpless, then offer a deal that looks like mercy, but is really just another form of control. My brother got the same treatment. Wilson stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. We need to move faster. If he's already involving the police, he's preparing a full attack. We can't wait for reporters to verify sources and write careful stories. We need to go nuclear right now. What do you mean? Sarah asked. I mean, we hold a press conference. Tomorrow. We lay out everything, your photographs, my testimony, Jessica's documentation. We put it all out there at once, before Henderson can spin the narrative. We tell the truth loudly enough that he can't bury it. Jessica was already shaking her head. That's incredibly risky. If we do it wrong, if we make any mistakes, Henderson will use it to discredit everything we're saying. He'll claim we're lying, that we're conspiracy theorists, that we're trying to extort him. He's going to claim that anyway, Wilson shot back. At least this way, the truth gets out there first. People can hear our side before Henderson poisons the well. Sarah listened to them argue, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on her. Both approaches had merit. Both were terrifying. But Wilson was right about one thing. They were running out of time. Henderson was already moving against them, already using his connections to paint Sarah as a criminal. If they waited too long, he'd control the narrative before they ever got to tell their story. "We do the press conference," Sarah said quietly. Both Jessica and Wilson stopped talking and looked at her. Sarah stood up, feeling more certain than she had about anything since finding those files in Henderson's office. "We do it tomorrow. We tell the truth. We show the evidence. And we let the world decide who to believe. 3 people with nothing to gain except justice, or a powerful man with everything to lose." Jessica still looked uncertain. "Mrs. Mitchell, if this goes wrong..." "If this goes wrong, I'll probably end up in jail," Sarah interrupted. "But if we don't do anything, Henderson wins. My daughter stays unavenged. James stays branded as a murderer. Your brother's death stays meaningless. And Henderson keeps destroying lives whenever it suits him. I can live with the risk. I can't live with the alternative." Wilson nodded slowly. "She's right. We've all lost too much already. What's a little more risk compared to that?" Jessica was quiet for a long moment, then she pulled out her phone. "Okay, I'll start making calls. We'll need a venue, reporters confirmed to attend, copies of all our evidence prepared for distribution. This has to be professional, credible, unassailable. We get one shot at this." For the next several hours, Sarah's apartment became a war room. Jessica worked her contacts in the media, securing commitments from reporters to attend a press conference the following afternoon. Wilson refined his written testimony, making sure every detail was accurate and verifiable. Sarah organized the photographs from Henderson's office, creating a timeline that showed exactly how the cover-up had worked. As evening fell, Sarah's phone rang again. This time it was her daughter-in-law, Michael's mother. "Sarah, there's a man here asking questions about you. He says he's a private investigator. He wants to know about your finances, your friends, your daily routine. I told him to leave, but he gave me his card and said you might want to cooperate with his investigation." Sarah's hands clenched into fists. Henderson wasn't just threatening her. He was investigating her, looking for anything he could use as leverage or blackmail. He was probably doing the same to Jessica and Wilson. "Don't talk to anyone," Sarah said. "Don't answer any questions about me. And please keep Michael safe. Don't let him go anywhere alone." "Sarah, what's going on? Are you in some kind of trouble?" "I'm trying to do the right thing, and some very powerful people don't want me to. Please, just trust me and keep Michael close." After she hung up, Sarah looked at her 2 allies. "He's investigating all of us, looking for weaknesses." "Let him look," Wilson said. "I've got nothing to hide. I spent 10 years in prison. What's he going to find that's worse than that?" But Sarah saw the fear in his eyes, the same fear she felt. Henderson wasn't just powerful, he was ruthless. He'd already proven he was willing to destroy innocent lives to protect his own interests. What would he do when cornered? How far would he go to keep his secrets buried? "We need to be careful," Jessica said. "We should stay together tonight. Safety in numbers. Henderson won't try anything overt if we're all together and people know where we are." They ordered pizza and ate it sitting on Sarah's floor, too wired with adrenaline and fear to care about comfort. As midnight approached, they took turns trying to sleep, though none of them managed more than fitful dozing. Every sound from the street outside made them jump. Every creak of the old building set their nerves on edge. Tomorrow would change everything. Tomorrow they would step into the light and tell the truth. Tomorrow they would face whatever consequences came from challenging one of the most powerful men in the city. Sarah looked at Emily's photographs on the wall, at her daughter's smiling face frozen in time. "I'm doing this for you, baby," she whispered. "I'm finally doing what I should have done 15 years ago. I'm fighting back." And as the first hints of dawn began to lighten the sky outside her window, Sarah Mitchell felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. The community center on Elm Street wasn't much to look at, a squat brick building with faded paint and windows that hadn't been properly cleaned in years. But it had a meeting room that could hold about 50 people, and the director had agreed to let them use it for free when Jessica explained what they were trying to do. By noon, the room was packed with reporters, cameras, curious locals who'd heard something was happening, and a few faces Sarah didn't recognize but assumed were Henderson's people, there to monitor and report back. Sarah stood in the small side room they were using as a staging area, staring at her reflection in a cracked mirror someone had hung on the wall. She looked older than her 42 years, worn down by life and grief and too many nights working when she should have been sleeping. Her clothes were the best she owned, a simple black dress she'd bought for her son's funeral 5 years ago and hadn't worn since. It felt appropriate somehow, wearing funeral clothes to lay her daughter's case to rest once and for all. "You ready?" Jessica asked, appearing beside her. The young woman looked terrified but determined, her red jacket traded for a conservative gray suit that made her look more like a lawyer than a paralegal. "No," Sarah admitted, "but I don't think I'll ever be ready, so we might as well do it now." Wilson was already in the main room, sitting at the table they'd set up at the front. He wore jeans and a button-down shirt, the nicest clothes he owned, he'd said, and his hands kept moving restlessly, arranging and rearranging the papers in front of him. Sarah could see the fear radiating off him from across the room. He was about to stand up in front of cameras and admit that he'd spent 10 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit. He was about to make himself vulnerable in ways that most people couldn't even imagine. The room fell silent as Sarah and Jessica entered and took their seats at the table. Camera lights switched on, temporarily blinding Sarah until her eyes adjusted. She could feel the weight of dozens of stares, could hear the rustle of notepads and the soft clicks of camera shutters. This was really happening. After 15 years of silence, after decades of Henderson's corruption going unchallenged, they were finally speaking up. Jessica leaned toward the microphone they'd borrowed from the community center. "Thank you all for coming. My name is Jessica Chin. With me are Sarah Mitchell and James Wilson. We're here today to expose a pattern of corruption and evidence manipulation that has been perpetrated by Marcus Henderson and Associates for at least 20 years. A murmur ran through the crowd. Sarah saw several reporters lean forward, interest piqued. Others looked skeptical, their expressions suggesting they thought this might be a waste of time, or worse, some kind of publicity stunt. Jessica continued, her voice gaining strength. 15 years ago, 17-year-old Emily Mitchell was killed in a car accident. James Wilson was convicted of vehicular manslaughter and served 10 years in prison for her death. But James Wilson didn't kill Emily Mitchell. He wasn't even driving the car that night. The actual driver was Derek Henderson, son of Marcus Henderson. And Marcus Henderson orchestrated an elaborate cover-up to protect his son, including falsifying evidence, bribing witnesses, and convincing an innocent man to plead guilty to a crime he didn't commit. The murmur became a roar. Reporters started shouting questions, cameras swiveled to capture different angles, and Sarah saw one of the men she'd pegged as Henderson's people pull out his phone and start typing urgently. "We have evidence," Jessica said, raising her voice to be heard over the noise. "Documented evidence from Henderson's own files showing exactly how the cover-up was executed. Mrs. Mitchell, would you like to explain how you obtained these documents?" Sarah's mouth was dry. She took a sip of water from the bottle Jessica had set in front of her, then leaned toward the microphone. Her voice shook at first, but grew steadier as she spoke. 3 nights ago, I was working my shift as a cleaner at Henderson and Associates. I've worked there for 3 years, cleaning offices every weeknight. That night, I found Marcus Henderson's office in disarray. Unusual for him, as he's normally extremely organized. As I was cleaning up, I found papers scattered on the floor. Papers with my daughter's name on them. Papers about her death. Sarah pulled out her phone and held it up. I photographed everything I found. Police reports that had been altered. Toxicology results that had been falsified. Private investigator notes detailing how the cover-up was accomplished. All of it kept in Marcus Henderson's personal files. A reporter in the front row raised her hand. "Mrs. Mitchell, you photographed confidential files from a law office. Aren't you concerned about the legal implications of that?" "I'm terrified of the legal implications," Sarah said honestly. "Marcus Henderson has already filed charges against me. He's sent private investigators to harass my family. He's using every tool at his disposal to intimidate me into silence. But I'm not going to be silent anymore. My daughter deserves justice. James Wilson deserves justice. And every other person Marcus Henderson has hurt over the years deserves to have the truth told." She nodded to Jessica, who began distributing packets of documents to the reporters. Copies of the photographs Sarah had taken, carefully organized and annotated. Sarah watched the reporters' faces as they flipped through the pages, saw skepticism turn to interest, interest turn to shock. Wilson leaned forward to speak, his voice rough with emotion. "My name is James Wilson. 15 years ago, I was 24 years old. I had a job I liked, a girlfriend I loved, a future I was looking forward to. Then one night, I was driving home from work when another car crossed the center line and hit me. The next thing I knew, I was in the hospital under arrest. They told me I was drunk. They told me I'd killed a teenage girl. They told me the evidence against me was overwhelming. His hands gripped the edge of the table, so hard his knuckles went white. I wasn't drunk. I hadn't been drinking at all that night. But the breathalyzer said I was over the limit. The blood test said I was intoxicated. Marcus Henderson himself came to see me in jail and told me that I had two choices: plead guilty to manslaughter and get 8 to 10 years, or go to trial for murder and spend the rest of my life in prison. I was terrified. I was alone. So I took the deal. I pleaded guilty to killing Emily Mitchell. Tears were streaming down his face now, but his voice never wavered. I spent 10 years in prison believing I was a murderer. 10 years thinking I'd destroyed a family because of my own recklessness. 10 years carrying guilt that ate at me every single day. And it was all based on a lie. Marcus Henderson falsified evidence. He convinced me to confess to something I didn't do. He sent me to prison to protect his own son. The room was completely silent now except for the soft whir of cameras. Sarah saw several reporters wiping their eyes. Even the people she'd identified as Henderson's plants looked shaken. Jessica took over again. This isn't an isolated incident. I've been documenting Henderson's cases for 2 years, and I found a pattern of evidence manipulation, witness tampering, and outright fraud. My own brother was convicted of a crime he didn't commit because Henderson represented the actual perpetrator. My brother died in prison last year, beaten to death for something he never did. She opened her tablet and began showing slides, case summaries, timelines, documentation of other suspicious cases. Henderson has been doing this for decades. He's one of the most powerful attorneys in the state, and he's used that power to subvert justice whenever it served his interests or the interests of his wealthy clients. We're not here asking for your sympathy. We're here presenting evidence of crimes that need to be investigated. A reporter from one of the major networks stood up. Have you taken this evidence to the police or the district attorney's office? We're presenting it here first because Marcus Henderson has connections throughout the legal system, Jessica said. We believe that if we went through official channels, the evidence would disappear or be suppressed. We're going public because public pressure is the only thing that can force a proper investigation. Another reporter called out, "What do you say to accusations that you're trying to extort money from Henderson?" Sarah leaned into the microphone. Marcus Henderson already tried to buy my silence. He offered me $200,000 for my grandson's education if I would delete the photographs and never speak about what I'd found. I refused. This isn't about money. This is about justice for my daughter and for every other victim of his corruption. The questions continued for another 30 minutes, each one giving them another opportunity to present their evidence, to tell their story, to make the case against Marcus Henderson. Sarah could see the tide turning in the room. The skeptical faces were becoming convinced. The doubtful questions were becoming outraged demands for accountability. Finally, Jessica held up her hand. We have one more thing to say before we take final questions. Marcus Henderson is a powerful man with significant resources. He will try to discredit us. He will use his connections to paint us as liars, as criminals, as people motivated by greed or revenge. But we want everyone here to remember something. We have nothing to gain from this except justice. Sarah Mitchell is a cleaning lady who could lose her job and face criminal charges. James Wilson is an ex-convict who could be subjected to further persecution. I'm a paralegal who will almost certainly never work in law again. We're risking everything to tell this truth. Ask yourself, why would we do that if we were lying? The room erupted with more questions, but Jessica stood up, signaling that the press conference was over. We've provided you with all our documentation. We've told you our stories. Now we're asking you to investigate, to dig deeper, to help expose the truth. Thank you for your time. As they filed out of the room through a side door, away from the crush of reporters still shouting questions, Sarah felt her legs nearly give out. The adrenaline that had kept her upright was draining away, leaving her shaky and exhausted. Wilson caught her arm, steadying her. "We did it," he said, and there was wonder in his voice. "We actually did it. Now comes the hard part," Jessica said grimly, looking at her phone. "I've already got 15 messages from numbers I don't recognize. Henderson's counterattack is about to begin." But Sarah barely heard her. She was thinking about Emily, about the photographs on her apartment wall, about 15 years of grief and guilt and questions. They'd told the truth. Whatever happened next, at least they'd told the truth. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Against her better judgment, she opened it. The message was short and chilling. You just made the biggest mistake of your life. Emash. Sarah showed it to the others. Wilson's face went pale, but Jessica just nodded grimly. The war has started, she said. We'd better be ready. The story broke on every major news outlet within 3 hours of the press conference. Sarah watched from Jessica's apartment. They'd decided it was safer to stay together. As talking heads dissected their allegations, legal experts weighed in on the evidence, and Marcus Henderson's face filled screen after screen. He'd released a statement almost immediately, calling their accusations baseless defamation and a coordinated attack by disgruntled individuals seeking financial gain. Listen to how he's framing it, Jessica said, her eyes fixed on the television. He's not denying the specifics. He's attacking our credibility and our motives. Classic deflection. Sarah barely heard her. She was watching Henderson himself appear on the evening news, standing on the steps of his law firm surrounded by associates in expensive suits. He looked calm, collected, almost sympathetic, the picture of a man being wrongly accused. I have tremendous compassion for Mrs. Mitchell, Henderson was saying, his voice dripping with false concern. She lost her daughter in a tragic accident 15 years ago, and that kind of grief can drive people to desperate, irrational actions. But grief doesn't justify breaking into private offices, stealing confidential documents, and constructing elaborate conspiracy theories. As for Mr. Wilson, he pleaded guilty to vehicular manslaughter. He admitted his guilt in open court. Now, 15 years later, he's trying to rewrite history. He's good, Wilson said bitterly from the couch where he sat with his head in his hands. I'll give him that. He's making us sound crazy. But Sarah noticed something Henderson probably hoped people would miss. His son hadn't appeared with him. Derek Henderson, the man who'd actually killed Emily, was nowhere to be seen. That absence spoke volumes to anyone paying attention. Sarah's phone rang. It was Michael, her grandson, and she could hear the panic in his voice before he even finished saying hello. Grandma, what's happening? There are reporters at school asking questions about you. Mom says I can't talk to anyone. The news is saying you broke into a law office. Did you really do that? Sarah's heart clenched. This was what she'd feared most, dragging her family into the mess. Michael, honey, I need you to listen carefully. Everything I did for the right reasons. Your mom, Emily, my daughter, she didn't die the way everyone thought. Someone lied about what happened, and I found proof. I'm trying to make sure the truth comes out. But they're saying you could go to jail. Maybe I will. But some things are more important than staying safe. Your mom deserved justice, and I'm going to make sure she gets it, no matter what it costs me. There was a long pause, and when Michael spoke again, his voice was stronger. What can I do to help? Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. Just take care of your mom. And remember that sometimes doing the right thing means taking risks. I love you, sweetheart. After she hung up, Sarah noticed that both Jessica and Wilson were staring at their own phones with identical expressions of dread. What is it? Jessica turned her phone around to show Sarah a news article that had just been posted. The headline read, Paralegal accused of embezzlement from Henderson and Associates. Sarah's stomach dropped as she read further. According to the article, Henderson was claiming that Jessica had been stealing from the firm for months, and that her allegations against him were an attempt to deflect attention from her own crimes. It's completely fabricated, Jessica said, her voice shaking with rage. I've never stolen anything in my life. But he'll have manufactured evidence. He'll have doctored financial records. He's done this before. When people threaten him, he doesn't just defend himself, he destroys them. Wilson was reading something on his own phone, his face going progressively paler. He's claiming I violated my parole. Says I failed to report for my monthly check-in 3 months ago. That could send me back to prison. Did you miss a check-in? Sarah asked. No, I haven't missed one in 3 years. I'm terrified of going back to prison. I'd never risk it. Wilson's hands were shaking. But if he's falsified records showing that I did miss it, my parole officer will have to investigate. Even if I'm eventually cleared, they could revoke my parole pending investigation. I could be back in jail by tomorrow. Sarah felt the walls closing in. Henderson wasn't just defending himself. He was launching a coordinated assault designed to neutralize each of them. Discredit Jessica as a thief. Send Wilson back to prison. Paint Sarah as a grief-crazed criminal. It was brilliant and ruthless in equal measure. We knew this was coming, Sarah said, trying to sound braver than she felt. We knew he'd fight back. Knowing it and living through it are two different things, Jessica said. She was pacing now, her earlier confidence eroded by the reality of what they were facing. He's going to bury us. He has unlimited resources, unlimited connections. We're just three people with some documents. How are we supposed to fight that? Before anyone could answer, there was a sharp knock on the door. All three of them froze. Jessica's apartment was in a secure building. Whoever was at the door had been buzzed in by someone. Another knock, more insistent this time. Ms. Chin? This is Detective Torres with the city police. We need to speak with you regarding allegations of embezzlement. Jessica's face went white. Sarah reached out and squeezed her hand. Don't let them in without a warrant, she whispered. Jessica moved to the door, but didn't open it. Detective, I haven't committed any crimes. Any allegations against me are false and part of a campaign of harassment by Marcus Henderson. That may be, ma'am, but we still need to ask you some questions. You can come with us voluntarily, or we can obtain a warrant and do this the hard way. Sarah saw Jessica's resolve crumbling. Going to the police station would mean interrogation, would mean being separated from her allies, would mean playing Henderson's game on his turf. But refusing would make her look guilty, would give Henderson more ammunition for his counterattack. I'll come to the station tomorrow morning with my attorney, Jessica said, her voice admirably steady. I'm happy to cooperate with any legitimate investigation, but I'm exercising my right to legal representation. There was a pause then. Very well. But don't leave town, Ms. Chin. And be aware that if you're charged, bail might be set quite high given the serious nature of the allegations. They waited until they heard footsteps retreating down the hallway before anyone spoke. Jessica sank onto the couch, her entire body shaking. I don't have an attorney. I can't afford one. We'll find one, Sarah said with more confidence than she felt. Someone who's willing to stand up to Henderson. Wilson was scrolling through his phone with increasing urgency. The story is everywhere now, and people are picking sides. Some believe us, but a lot of comments are calling us liars, con artists, attention seekers. Henderson's PR machine is working overtime. But as Sarah watched the news coverage continue, she began to notice something. Yes, Henderson had his defenders, but there were cracks appearing in his armor. A retired judge had gone on record saying the evidence Sarah presented raised serious questions that deserved investigation. A victims' rights group had issued a statement supporting their call for accountability. And most significantly, other people were starting to come forward. People who claimed they'd also been victimized by Henderson's manipulations. Sarah's phone buzzed with a call from a number she didn't recognize. Normally she wouldn't answer, but something made her pick up. Hello, Mrs. Mitchell? My name is David Chin. I'm Jessica's father. The man's voice was formal, slightly accented. I saw the news. I saw what my daughter is trying to do. I need to speak with her. Sarah handed the phone to Jessica, whose face went through a complicated series of emotions: fear, hope, apprehension. Dad! Sarah and Wilson moved to the kitchen to give her privacy, but they could hear snatches of the conversation. Jessica's father was apparently a lawyer, though he'd been retired for several years. He was angry with his daughter for putting herself in danger, but he was also proud of her for standing up for what was right. And most importantly, he knew other lawyers who might be willing to help, people who'd had their own run-ins with Marcus Henderson over the years and would relish the chance to take him down. When Jessica hung up, her eyes were bright with tears but also with renewed determination. My father is calling in every favor he has. He thinks he can put together a legal team for us by tomorrow. He says Henderson has made enemies over the years, powerful enemies who've been waiting for an opportunity like this. Sarah felt a flicker of hope. They weren't as alone as Henderson wanted them to believe. For every connection Henderson had, there were people he'd wronged, people he'd underestimated, people who were tired of watching him manipulate the system. The television was showing footage from outside Henderson's law firm, where a small group of protesters had gathered. They held signs reading "Justice for Emily" and "Investigate Henderson." It was only a dozen people, but it was something. The story was resonating. People were paying attention. Wilson's phone rang next. He answered it, listened for a moment, then his face transformed with an expression Sarah had never seen on him before. Pure, undiluted hope. "Yes, I'll hold," he said, then covered the phone and looked at them with wide eyes. "It's the Innocence Project. They want to take my case." The Innocence Project, Sarah had heard of them. They worked to exonerate people who'd been wrongly convicted. If they were willing to take Wilson's case, it meant they believed him. It meant he might actually get his conviction overturned. For the first time since the press conference, Sarah felt like they might actually have a chance. Henderson was powerful, yes. He had resources and connections and decades of experience crushing anyone who opposed him. But they had something he didn't, the truth. And the truth, once it started spreading, was very hard to stop. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from a reporter she'd given her number to at the press conference. "Anonymous source just sent me additional documents corroborating your claims. Someone inside Henderson's firm is leaking. This is bigger than you know. Stay safe." Sarah showed the message to the others. Jessica's eyes widened. "Someone else at the firm? Someone's helping us. Or they're trying to save themselves before the ship sinks," Wilson suggested. "Either way, it helps us." The three of them stayed up late into the night, monitoring news coverage, coordinating with Jessica's father and the lawyers he was assembling, preparing for the battles they knew were coming. Henderson had launched his counterattack, but they were still standing. Wounded, scared, but still standing. As midnight approached, Sarah found herself standing at Jessica's window, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Marcus Henderson was probably doing the same thing, plotting his next move, trying to figure out how to contain the damage. For 15 years, he'd controlled the narrative about Emily's death. But not anymore. "I'm not giving up," Sarah said softly. "I don't care what he does to me. I'm not giving up." Jessica came to stand beside her. "Neither am I. We're in this together now." Wilson joined them at the window, and for a moment, the three of them just stood there. A cleaning lady, a paralegal, and an ex-con, united against one of the most powerful men in the state. The odds were still against them. Henderson would keep attacking, keep trying to destroy their credibility and their lives. But they'd survived the first day. They'd gotten their story out, and they weren't alone anymore. 3 weeks had passed since the press conference, and the story had taken on a life of its own. What started as a local controversy had exploded into a national scandal. Major news networks were running nightly segments on Marcus Henderson's alleged corruption. The State Bar Association had launched an investigation. The district attorney's office, under enormous public pressure, had announced they were reviewing all of Henderson's cases from the past 20 years. Sarah sat in a conference room at the offices of Chun and Associates, Jessica's father's old firm, brought out of retirement specifically for this case. Around the table sat a team of 5 lawyers, each one bringing expertise in different areas: criminal defense, civil rights, evidence law, media relations. They'd all volunteered their time, motivated by a combination of professional rivalry with Henderson and genuine outrage at what he'd done. "The state bar hearing is in 2 days, David Chin was saying, his weathered face serious behind wire-rimmed glasses. "They're considering whether to suspend Henderson's license pending the criminal investigation. If we can convince them, it will send a powerful message." Jessica, sitting beside her father, was reviewing documents on her laptop. The relationship between them had thawed considerably over the past weeks. He'd been furious with her for putting herself in danger, but also immensely proud of her courage. "We have 11 people now who've come forward claiming Henderson manipulated their cases. 11. That's in addition to Emily's case and my brother's case. The pattern is undeniable." Wilson was there too, looking healthier than Sarah had seen him. The Innocence Project had taken his case and was moving quickly. They'd already found evidence that his toxicology reports had been falsified, and a judge had agreed to hear arguments for overturning his conviction. For the first time in 15 years, James Wilson had hope of clearing his name. "What about Derek Henderson?" Sarah asked, the question that had haunted her since the beginning. Marcus Henderson was the one who'd orchestrated the cover-up, but Derek was the one who'd actually killed her daughter. "Has anyone found him?" David Chen's expression darkened. "He disappeared 2 days after your press conference. Left the country, we believe. His father probably sent him somewhere without an extradition treaty. But don't worry, Mrs. Mitchell. Once we prove what Marcus Henderson did, Derek won't be able to hide forever. The truth has a way of catching up with people." Sarah wanted to believe that, but 15 years had taught her that justice was neither swift nor certain. Still, they'd come further than she'd ever dreamed possible. Henderson was on the defensive, his reputation in tatters, his career hanging by a thread. Even if Derek escaped immediate consequences, at least the world would know what he'd done. Her phone buzzed with a text from Michael. "Grandma, turn on Channel 7. Right now." Sarah grabbed the remote and switched on the television mounted on the conference room wall. A breaking news banner scrolled across the bottom of the screen. "Former Henderson associate speaks out. I was ordered to destroy evidence. The room fell silent as they watched a man Sarah vaguely recognized, Richard something, a junior partner at Henderson's firm, being interviewed. His face was pale, his hands shaking, but his voice was steady as he spoke. "I've worked at Henderson and Associates for 12 years, Richard was saying. And for 12 years, I've watched Marcus Henderson manipulate the legal system. I've been ordered to destroy evidence, to pay off witnesses, to falsify documents. I did it because I was afraid of what would happen if I refused. But after seeing Mrs. Mitchell and the others come forward, after watching them risk everything to tell the truth, I realized I couldn't stay silent anymore. I have files, recordings, emails, everything documenting Henderson's corruption, and I'm turning it all over to the authorities." Jessica let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "That's Richard Morrison. He's, or was, Henderson's right-hand man. If he's testifying against him, it's over. Henderson can't survive this." David Chen was already on his phone, presumably calling contacts in the district attorney's office. The other lawyers were talking excitedly, discussing the implications of this new testimony. But Sarah just sat there, watching the interview, feeling a strange mixture of vindication and hollowness. They'd won. Against all odds, against a man with nearly unlimited power and resources, they'd actually won. The truth was coming out. Justice, delayed by 15 years, was finally within reach. So why did she feel so empty? Wilson seemed to sense her mood because he moved to sit beside her, his hand gently touching her shoulder. "You okay?" "I thought I'd feel different," Sarah admitted quietly. "I thought when we finally exposed him, when justice was finally served, I'd feel, I don't know, happy? Satisfied? But Emily's still gone. Nothing we've done brings her back." "No," Wilson agreed. "But you've made sure her death meant something. You've saved other people from going through what we went through. That matters, Sarah. That really matters." Before Sarah could respond, her phone rang. The caller ID showed a number with an international prefix, somewhere in Europe, if she was reading it correctly. Confused, she answered. "Hello, Mrs. Mitchell?" The voice was young, male, shaking with emotion. "This is Derek Henderson." Sarah's blood turned to ice. Jessica noticed her expression and immediately moved closer, mouthing, "Who is it?" Sarah put the phone on speaker so everyone could hear. "I'm calling because I need to tell you something. Something I should have said 15 years ago." Derek's voice was thick with tears. "I killed your daughter. I was driving that night. I crossed the center line. And when I realized what I'd done, I was so scared that I let my father convince me to stay silent. I let James Wilson go to prison for something I did. I've lived with that guilt every single day, and I can't carry it anymore." The room was absolutely silent. Sarah couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything except listen to the voice of the man who'd destroyed her life. "I'm in Switzerland right now," Derek continued. "My father sent me here to hide, but I'm coming back. I'm going to turn myself in and tell the truth about everything. I know it won't bring Emily back. I know nothing I do can ever make this right. But I need you to know that I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Sarah found her voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. "Why now? Why are you coming forward now?" "Because of you," Derek said simply. "Because you risked everything to find the truth. Because James Wilson had the courage to speak up. Because I watched my father try to destroy you, watched him use every dirty trick he knew, and I realized I'd become everything I'd always hated about him. I'm not that person anymore, or at least, I'm trying not to be." One of the lawyers, Sarah couldn't even register which one, was frantically gesturing that they should record this, should get Derek to repeat everything on the record. But Sarah didn't care about evidence or testimony or legal strategy. All she could think about was Emily. "My daughter was 17 years old," Sarah said, her voice breaking. "She wanted to be a teacher. She loved poetry and terrible pop music and staying up too late talking to her friends. She had her whole life ahead of her, and you took that away. You took that away, and then you let someone else pay for it. I know, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to atone for it. I'm catching a flight back tomorrow. I'm going to tell the police everything, and then I'm going to plead guilty to whatever charges they bring. I'm not running anymore." The line went dead. Sarah sat there, staring at her phone, trying to process what had just happened. The man who'd killed Emily was coming back to face justice. After 15 years, he was finally going to be held accountable. David Chen was already on multiple phones, calling prosecutors, calling the media, making sure Derek Henderson couldn't back out or change his mind. The other lawyers were drafting statements, preparing for the media storm that would follow this development. Jessica was crying, her father's arm around her shoulders. But Sarah just felt tired. Bone deep, soul tired in a way she hadn't felt since the days immediately after Emily's death. Wilson sat beside her again. "You did it," he said quietly. "You brought them both down, father and son. You got justice." "Justice," Sarah repeated the word, tasting it, trying to make it feel real. 15 years too late. "Better late than never," Wilson said. "At least now everyone knows the truth. Emily's name is cleared. My name is cleared. And Marcus Henderson is going to prison for what he did." Sarah looked at him, this man who'd lost 10 years of his life because of lies and corruption. Was it worth it? All the pain, all the risk? Wilson considered the question seriously. "Ask me again in a year. Right now, I'm just glad it's over." But Sarah wondered if it would ever really be over. The news would move on to the next scandal, the next tragedy. People would forget about Emily Mitchell and James Wilson and Jessica Chin. Life would go on, the way it always did. Except for her. For Sarah, every day would still be marked by Emily's absence. Justice didn't fill that hole. Revenge didn't heal that wound. Nothing did. Her phone buzzed with a text from Michael. "Grandma, I'm so proud of you. Mom Emily would be proud too. You never gave up on her." Sarah read the message 3 times, and finally, she felt something break loose in her chest. Not happiness, exactly. Not satisfaction. But something like peace. Maybe Wilson was right. Maybe justice 15 years late was better than no justice at all. Maybe exposing the truth, protecting others, making sure Emily's death meant something. Maybe that was enough. It would have to be enough. Because it was all she had. 2 days later, Sarah stood in a courtroom watching Marcus Henderson be led away in handcuffs, his law license suspended, his reputation destroyed, criminal charges pending. Derek Henderson had kept his word and returned to face prosecution. The cover-up was exposed. The truth had prevailed. Sarah thought about Emily's photographs on her apartment wall, about the girl who'd loved poetry and terrible pop music. She thought about all the years of grief, all the nights working alone in empty offices, all the times she'd felt invisible and powerless. She wasn't invisible anymore. She'd fought back against one of the most powerful men in the city, and she'd won. As she left the courthouse, reporters swarmed her with questions. Sarah looked into the cameras and said the only thing that mattered. This was for Emily. This was always for Emily. And I hope wherever she is, she knows that her mother never stopped fighting for her. Sarah Mitchell's story forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. Justice is not always blind, and power often corrupts the very systems designed to protect us. For 15 years, she lived with grief she thought was simply fate, never knowing that her daughter's death was the result of deliberate deception by someone she passed in the hallways every night. When she finally discovered the truth, she had every reason to stay silent, to protect herself, to avoid the legal threats, to take the money and secure her grandson's future. But she chose differently. She chose to fight, knowing she might lose everything in the process. Ask yourself, if you discovered a truth that could destroy you but might save others, would you have the courage to speak? Would you risk your freedom, your family's safety, your entire life for a chance at justice? The most powerful moment in this story isn't when Marcus Henderson was led away in handcuffs, or when Derek Henderson finally confessed. It's when Sarah looked at those photographs of Emily and decided that her daughter's memory mattered more than her own safety. That's the moment she stopped being invisible. That's the moment she reclaimed her power. We all face moments in life when we must choose between what's easy and what's right, between silence and truth, between comfort and justice. Sarah's story reminds us that ordinary people can accomplish extraordinary things when they refuse to accept injustice, even when the entire world tells them they're powerless. If this story moved you, if Sarah's courage inspired you, if you believe that truth matters no matter how long it takes to emerge, then please follow our channel, leave a like, and share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Every share helps us reach more people with stories that matter, stories that remind us that one person can make a difference, no matter how invisible they feel.